So today, welcome for the innovation session today. So today we are mainly focusing on how we can improve the performance of the front end of our application. So mainly focusing upon the presentation layer. So these are the main contents that we are planning to go through today. So first, we will try to go through some of the insights about web performance. So, we'll be able to identify what is the requirement of improvement that we need to do in our applications, and after that we will focus what are the test levels available and where the front end comes through. And after that we have when it comes to the front end, there are two types of performance testing available. One is the real user monitoring, so that we will be able to identify performance issues, and the other one is synthetic monitoring, so that we can simulate the user journeys and identify if there are any performance issues. And the other one is so after that we will try to identify what are the measurements that we need to go through when it comes to client side. After that, what are the techniques and rules that available we can improve our web page. And after that, we will try to go through some of the success stories, so that we will be able to identify where those has been actually applied and what are the success stories. So first, these are some of the web page insights about performance metrics. So like mainly these are taken from the Akamai site. So they are static content providers. So they mainly research about the how performance matters for the users. So when it comes to these facts, the first rule is if we have the response times within 100 milliseconds, we call it instantaneous, so that user will not see any difference between the changes. And when it comes to 300 to 100 milliseconds, the delay is perceptible, so user will identify there's a delay, but that should not be a big problem. And after that, the 1 second is the limit that user might directly focus upon the web page. If our site is increasing more than 1 second, user might tend to distract from the page. And this is the main key point. So most of the users would expect the page should be loaded within 2 seconds. If we go beyond that, then user might get distracted and might leave the site. And after 3 seconds, with the stats of the Akamai, they say that after 3 seconds of page delay, 40% of the users will leave the page without using it. And when it comes to 10 seconds, user will definitely lose their attention to the web page, so that user will not be using that page. So these are some of the stats available in the web. So you will be able to identify these in any forum. So this is the critical thing about the web pages. So we need to be make sure that our website is performing well. Otherwise, these issues will occur with our pages as well. And so when it comes to test levels, we can mainly divide it into three parts. First thing is the backend performance. So mainly backend performance relies with the server, how powerful our server is, and how quality is our code. So these are the main factors when it comes to server side. And after that, when code is shipped into network, the network connection is the next matter when it comes to performance. So we have to have a proper bandwidth and high network utilization to cater the load. And after that, when it comes to client side, it is mainly about how content loaded and rendered to the page. So this is the main area that we will be focusing our presentation. Okay, so these are some of the monitoring tools available. So have you, any one of you aware about these tools, or have you anyone used these tools? Okay, so the AppDynamics, Dynatrace, Akamai, these are commercial tools that are available to monitor the application servers, as well as those tools will be used to identify the user journeys. They are providing that facility as well. So mainly in Cisco, we are now currently using Dynatrace, so that you will be able to have hands-on on these tools. So you'll be able to identify how the user journeys within our Cisco will be work. So in future, you'll be able to identify those by using the Dynatrace. So after that, these are the synthetic monitoring tools. So anyone can use this tool to measure our web performance stats. So mainly this can be divided into two parts. So first one is the profiling. So that will go through our workflows and identify whether there's any issues with the workflows. It will give a waterfall method distribution about our page, how that has been loaded. So I'll brief about the Lighthouse as a demo so that you will get more details on this. And when it comes to the page insight and the GT metrics, those are some of the tools that goes with the rules. So these tools will identify whether our application cater those rules. If not, they will highlight what are the improvements that we can do for our tools. Mainly it is like static verification. Okay, so I'll move to the demo now. So in this case, I'll use the GMeter official site to do the tracing. So when it comes to Lighthouse, it is inbuilt with the Chrome browser so that you can directly use it. No need to install anything here. So what you have to do is go to the developer tools and go to the audit tab. So since I have already done it, so I have to reopen it to create a new one. So it will open up this page so that it will give certain conditions that we can follow to simulate our workflow. So like whether we need to simulate mobile workflow, whether it is a desktop, and what are the audits that we need to do. So here there are a set of audits that are available. So we will be mainly focusing about the performance. So the other sections will give good quality about our code as well. But since we are focusing about the performance, we will select only the performance section. And here the network bandwidth is again a matter. So like if we use a mobile device, we might not have a good network bandwidth. So that if we want to simulate such a scenario, we can use these throttles to simulate that lower bandwidth scenarios as well. And this clear storage will clear all the cache, and workflows will be simulated with non-cache scenario. So what you have to do is just run the audit section. It will generate everything here. So I'll just select it so that you'll be able to see the navigation of this page as well. So it will refresh the whole content and try to identify how the HTML page has received and what are the resources have been received and how those will be painted to the page. So this will analyze the content and will give a informative description about the page. So also you can see some of the tips they are populating here as well. If you go while waiting to the report is generated, you can go through these. So these are some of the facts available. So like BBC has 10% loss due to extra 1 second. Likewise, they will give some factors as well. So this is the page that you will get after doing the auditing. So it will give certain set of matrices and set of opportunities and diagnostics about our web page. So like let's say the first colorful paint, it is about the initial paint that has happened in our page. So if I explain it more, so that initial color contentful paint means when it comes to the HTML page, what is the initial paint has happened within our web page. So like if we have text, whether the text has been appeared, like such a case, it will give that value here. So this is something important. And first meaningful paint. So like this value will be calculated if we have populated 90% of our content for the page, it will give the value what is the time it took to appear 90% of our content. So this is something really informative. So because mainly this is the response time that we need to target, because otherwise, even though small content has been painted, we might not get information about the page. So mainly we have to focus on this meaningful paint. So I will explain how this value has been populated. So again, here we can see the time to interactive. So this means that it took 9 seconds to user to interact with the page. Again, you can see here view trace, so that it will give more information about our page rendering. So here you can see how our web page has been painted. So in this case, we don't have the content in here. And in this page, we are having all the content that readable. So likewise, we'll be able to identify how the page has been painted in our browser. So you can see the timeline here, and how the Java the heap has been increased and decreased, those information as well. And if we go for the audit section again, it will give certain set of diagnostics as well. So like, let's say in this case, our DOM size is pretty much larger than the expected value. So the expected value will be the DOM size, number of DOM nodes should be 1500. So here we are reaching more than 2600. So these type of things that we need to mitigate in order to have a fast application. And here you can see there are high significant main thread works has been happened. So what we can do to mitigate this is we can remove the work from the main thread and give it to another thread. So those kind of things would reduce the overhead for the main thread, so that the user interaction will be happen more faster than the value that we have right now. So likewise, there are so many information here. So anyway, within the slides, I will go through most of these areas. So I'll move to the slide. So as I mentioned here, the first meaningful paint will paint most of the content, and the visually ready will be the fully content loaded, and time to interact where user can interact with the page. So otherwise, user will not be able to interact with the page until this is triggered. So these are some of the page rules that we need to follow in order to improve our web page performance. So first thing is avoid redirects. So if we have more redirects, the more time it takes to load the page. So we have to reduce the number of redirects, so that it will reduce the network time, so that user web page can render the content easily. And the next one is enable compression. So here again, I will explain how we can identify whether our application has any compression issues as well. So here you can see user inefficient cache policies. So here we need to make sure we have cached this content. Otherwise, these resources will continuously reloaded from the server. So we need to make sure these resources has been cached. And other than that, so like I mentioned, GC compression, there's a tool that we can use to validate whether we have compressed our content. So in this case, I'm using this tool so that you can see whether this page has been compressed properly and what is the gain of that compression. So you can see the number of byte has been reduced more than 4 times. So like, if we properly compress, we will have less load from the back end to front end. So this is something that we need to make sure we are doing in our web pages as well. So as same as web page test, as I mentioned before, there's a tool called web page test. This will do the same. So since we don't have much time, so I will just go through some of the recording scenario for the same web page. So if you can see, this will give report regarding those details. So here the gzip compression. So this image and this image has not been compressed. If we have compressed those images, we have more compression as well. So what we could have done is compress these images. So this is something special when it comes to SVG. So the other image types won't support gzip compression. So only these two types will support the gzip compression. So we need to make sure these type of images are compressed so that it will reduce the overhead for the browser. So the next one is leverage browser caching. As I mentioned in my tracing as well, if we have properly done the caching, we would have reduced our response times as well, because those images shouldn't have been rendered from the browser each time. So that is something that we need to do in the browser. So in this case, there's something that we need to be mindful, because we should not be cached for a long time. So the duration we have to specify properly. Otherwise, these values, if we have a lengthier values, even though we have changed the content, those will not get populated in the front end. So we need to be mindful what is the duration that we provide for the expiration of the cache. And after that, the optimization of the images. So this is something mainly that we have to look into, because most of our web page content are heavily dependent on the images. So like more than 70% of our web page content is the images. So that is something that we need to be reduced as well. So here, this is JPEG, and WebP is new technology that available to compress the images. And you can see it is more than 1/3 of the actual size of the JPG. So these type of compression mechanisms, if you have used it, we could have reduced the response times as well, because it will load those images faster. So that is something we need to be aware. We have to use optimal formats and optimize images. And after that, the CSS delivery. So, and the remove render blocking. So if we have render blocking images of JavaScript or CSS, the page will not give the first interactive and the first paint, because they are waiting till those CSS and JavaScripts loaded to paint our content. So user will not get proper informative details about the page if we have render blocking. So that is something that we need to be aware as well, because if we have render blocking or unoptimized CSS, then obviously page will delay. So that is for this solution, we have to either inline those. If we have a small CSS, we have to inline those, so that with the HTML page, those content will be loaded. So we don't have to wait till the CSS is loaded. And again, if we have any content like some CSS might not needed to load the main content in the page. So in that case, we can remove those CSS from the render blocking. And after that, the minification of the resources. For, as I mentioned in the images as well, so here we can reduce the content of the HTML. We might have redundant data, so we can remove those redundant data, and as well as we can reduce the CSS and JavaScript size by minifying those. So that is something that we need to do in order to make those resources downloaded faster. Yeah, so these are some of the success stories that are available in the web when it comes to the page load improvement. So like Walmart has, most of these are retail shops that, and Walmart has reduced the response time by 1 second, and it improves the conversion. So if I explain what is conversion, so if 100 users has loaded this page, 2% of users will leave not using that page. So this conversion has increased from 2%. And for Shopzilla, it has been improved by 25% page views, and staples also increased the conversion by 10%. So these are some of the success stories. So do you have any questions or anything that you want to clarify on these? So I'll again describe a small thing about, so you can always go to these web pages, like there are some informative details about the compressions in these tools. So this is web page test ordinary. So that will analyze your pages again and check whether you are using the proper image compressions. If you are not using those, they will suggest what are the compressions that you would have used. So there are so many contents available within these sites, mainly web page speed and Google. They have a blog available so that you can go through those. It will be really helpful to understanding more about these. Yeah, so thank you.